agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of September, which have been circulated. Are they an accurate record of our discussions?
I think there's something missing.
What's that right?
From those minutes. So on the piece where we were talking about the Brickhill development, I know it was me banging on about it, but we talked about the concern over the police report and the safety of having rat runs between estates. I know you put about the CCTV, but look, it's not just my concern. Of the 56 objections that are registered, 13 of them mention this as an issue, right? So it's not just my concern, and I feel that we haven't given that the due consideration there in the minutes.
So I think when we look at the minutes, what we're saying there is that first of all we've got the comments from the planning committee, the 2 bullet points there, and then we've got the resolution, which is the action that the clerk was to take about the early morning heavy machinery.
Yeah.
I don't think we I don't think we formally agreed anything else as an action. I appreciate it was discussed as a point, but there's no actual formal.
Just dismissed even though it's a safety concern of residents.
In terms of our discussion last time, I'm just trying to say that is what I think we formally. That's what we got to.
Okay.
Yeah. So we didn't agree anything else specific in addition to the point that's in the minutes that I'm aware of, that I can recall. So in terms of the accuracy, we don't normally record, the Sue doesn't normally record on a blow by blow, she said.
The rules, technically the rules for parish council minutes is you can have your discussion, that's open, and the minutes should record the decisions that you come to. So if you can have a discussion, it goes both ways. And then you record what you're going to do. So if you're going to do something. So I think what Mark's saying really is that that's part of the discussion, which is right. But then when it comes to minutes, otherwise parish council minutes, I know that when East West Rail was on, there was lots of information because people had to do it. But generally, minutes will normally say, following discussion, it was agreed to include this, that's...
Okay. So, if the minutes are accurate, then how do we raise it that actually there should be something done about it?
I raised a question on the back of what Mike was saying. We've discussed Grays Hill and the access between Grays Hill and Woodlands Park back in March, I think it was, and there was concerns raised about footpath access from Grays into Woodlands Park, and we were told, I think, by yourself that wasn't on the plans, but it very clearly shows on the plans that there are footpaths linking here, and I'm not sure that these discussions have perhaps explored that if I wasn't able to attend, as you know, last time, so I don't know whether... So
that was raised, and the comment was made that the police have raised it as a concern, but they raised something as a concern with every development, so it doesn't count. But just because it happens to be, that they've done that, there is a concern amongst the residents. So I appreciate that. Whether we discuss it as this part of the, agree with the minutes or not, I don't know. But to my mind, if people have got safety concerns, if the police have raised a safety concern, regardless of what our opinion is of that individual's raised, then we should be raising it.
So that item on the agenda last time was specifically about that planning application, about the reserve matters, as I recall. So I'm not sure what the next opportunity would be for that to be raised. I'm not sure what else is going to happen now beyond that particular item. It can be raised in any, can be discussed at any time, but what to hook it onto, I'm not clear about what's going to follow next with the Grays Hill from a planning perspective. Peter, I don't know if you can comment at all. You're aware of that.
I presume the application will go to the planning committee eventually, but everybody had the opportunity to put in individually comments to the Borough Planning Department on any concerns that they have. I haven't looked at the website on that particular application recently, so I'm not quite sure how many people did in fact put in that objection.
Yes, Wendy's declaring interest as a member of the planning committee, so she's not taking part in this, right? Okay, so it's not formally on the agenda tonight, this item, it's simply, as an item, it's simply there to recall whether or not this is what we discussed last time. We can discuss it next time in November. And have, if you want, but I'm not sure what that will then feed into, as I say. Fundamentally, without having, I don't want to break up, I don't want to have the conversation. This item is purely about the accuracy of the minutes.
Well, to my mind, they're not accurate then.
Because, as we've said,
because
only records recommendations and decisions, essentially. That's the whole purpose of the minutes.
We recommended the minutes reflect the safety concerns that were raised.
Well, we can note that. We can note that that was said, and then we can discuss it again another time if people wish to have that conversation in another meeting.
Do we know when it will be going put before the planning committee?
I have no idea. Sorry. No. Peter, you haven't.
No. There's a big shortage of planners in the planning department, so I think a lot of applications are being delayed.
So let's note, are we okay then to note that there were comments made at the last meeting about the issue of safety considerations and recommendations from the police architectural advisor. Everyone happy with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, anything else on the minutes? If not, can we agree them then? I'm happy with that? Do you agree? Right, thank you. Next item then, thank you. Public other session. We have 15 minutes available to us, and we have a member of the public.
Margaret Clark, Brickhill Drive. I have come to, well, I see it is going to be looked at, the speeding cameras on Bedford Drive. All I can say is it is getting worse and worse and worse. And the 30-mile signs at the moment, they are constantly being lit up. Now, I was aware earlier on in the year, because I did follow some of the meetings via Zoom, that certain things had been moving along. And I was under the impression that we were going to have them put in by the summer. Well, the summer's come and the summer's gone. And, I mean, I'm here by myself, but most people on Brickhill Drive, towards the Pilgrim School, we are really fed up with it. We really are fed up with it, and we really would like a solution, not in 2 or 3 years, but for not soon. Wherever I go, wherever I drive, there are speed cameras in villages and places like that. Brickhill Drive, where the traffic now is getting really, really busy, we've had no resolution, so I'd be grateful for some feedback on that, please.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret. So we've got the item on the agenda later on, so we'll cover it. Give me an update then.
Okay, that's fine.
So thank you. And if you'd like to hang on for that item.
Problem is, Mark, unless you've got an update, I haven't got one.
Well,
I was promised one, but...
Yeah. So we'll cover it
So
there.
you haven't got an update?
Well, we'll cover it in that item on the agenda. And by the way, you don't have to stay to the very end of the meeting, by the way.
I will stay, it's very interesting.
But you can leave whenever you wish after that item. Okay, so we'll move on then please to item 5, financial matters. To agree the bank reconciliations and any accounts and payments. Everyone happy to agree those? Sue circulated them. Okay, thank you. And secondly, to agree to spend £500 on additional lights for the Christmas tree on Waveney Green. Do you want to talk about that, Sue?
Well, every year we need extra lights because the tree A grows, but also we don't know how many sets of lights fail between them coming off the tree and going back on again. So we always buy about 5 sets, just to top it up really.
Any questions on that? Is everyone happy to spend an extra £500 on Christmas lights?
Do we, if we buy them every year, do we use them every year?
Well, what I do is when they go to put the lights on, I take down the extra sets, and today we've got none that haven't been used. Because what we don't know is how many have been vandalised, because when the members take them down, it is obviously a huge tree. They don't sift out, well, this set's not working, this isn't. They simply take the whole lot off. So we really have to be on, look, of course if we don't use them this year, we keep them, don't we? So we're not, you know, we've got a little bank, it's like an insurance really, isn't it?
So it's an investment for...
It is, because of course the tree is bigger every year, it's growing. So the light's got to spread over that tree really.
Okay. Is everyone happy that we spend that £500 on extra lights? Thank you very much. Okay, our next item is item 6, to receive an update of the average speed cameras in Brickhill Drive. And so Sue, you've been chasing for an update.
Well, I was promised one before this meeting, but it could, if it's come between about 5:15 and now, I won't have seen it, because I've been out obviously here for this meeting. So there could have been an update, but I've certainly not had it earlier than that. I don't know whether anybody else has got anything that they know.
So looking in Charlie's direction and some sort of hope we might... Can you say anything, Charlie, about the state of play with the average speed camera programme?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why there has been a delay is just negotiations with the police to make sure they can enforce them and they have the capacity to enforce them. I think at the moment Bedford is quite unique in the country in that most parts of the, well, I don't think there's any parts of the country that have average speed cameras on residential roads as we have in Bedford. And that's creating a huge resource requirement from the police, so it's just making sure that they can, if they are fitted, enforcing them when you're putting them in, if they're not going to be, if the police haven't got the capacity to enforce the network of average speed cameras. So I think that dialogue is just taking place, and we will be appraised when we have a final outcome.
Do we know when the dialogue is taking place? Do we know when the dialogue is taking place?
Well, I understand that Alan Burles was meant to be in touch with the police to advise you, so what the outcome was.
Yeah.
So, sorry, who's Alan?
He's the officer who is in charge of that programme.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Paula, you wanted this item on the agenda
Yeah.
anyway because of the
I did
accident.
want it on the agenda because some parishioners have contacted me much the same to say, you know, where is it? We discussed this while we were online meetings, and I do remember that. And there had been an accident, hadn't there, around the time that I sent the email to ask for it to be on the agenda. So
Yeah.
I'm a bit fathomed as to what the delays are myself.
In terms of enforcement, saying that they need more resources, isn't it about the people getting ticketed and stuff like that? And isn't this going to be helping the police in terms of dealing with crime by having the speed cameras? Because if they are also the ones that do the number plates, wouldn't this make it easier for them? So wouldn't they not want this to happen? Could we not send a lovely worded letter to the police force in terms of how we're wanting to support them in keeping... I don't understand what the police actually have to do. Surely if you go past it and you're speeding, it picks you up and gives you a ticket.
Or can we not ask for those?
Having received a couple of these. Is
that how it works?
No, but in terms of the police have to still enforce it, and there is because I cover one of the police forces, so I know it has to go, and Hertfordshire does it for both of Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, so they run it, and it's people, a manned person who processes it and sends you through the little letter that you have to tick to say whether it was you, blah, 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 and send it back. But it is resourced somehow, but it's still quite a lot of automated system. But I'm just thinking that in terms of how much it catches at the crime, wouldn't this make it easier to have them because of how you pick up illegal cars and all the other bits?
They're not ANPR cameras though.
They're not.
It's totally different to ANPR.
Why not make them ANPR? Because wouldn't they be killing two birds with one stone?
Totally consistent.
So, but we,
They have to be speed
I'm
cameras.
just saying, I think the
Yeah,
process
the speed cameras.
Hang on a minute,
Well,
guys.
they have to be ANPR.
Excuse me.
So you have to take
Excuse me,
one
you can
and one and
Mike,
set
if you can,
them at the
Mike,
other.
if you can indicate if you want to speak, I'll try and call people and get them in. But just to be clear, so I understand the process. We've gone through the conversations with Alan Bowles from the Borough Council. He's then liaised with the police about the location for the cameras, so we're trying to make sure they're in a location that they also approve. And then it's simply the next stage, as Charlie's explained. So there is an overall programme across the borough for these things, and we're part of that in terms of the installation and presumably,
Yeah. Chair, yes, nobody wants them quicker than Wednesday night because we've paid money towards them. But it's just a question of waiting until we can get that permission to proceed. And it's not just a question of automated. I mean, some people get courses and some people go to court, so you have to have court time and etc. etc. There's an awful lot of people being prosecuted. I think one camera in Willington caught over 500 people in a session, isn't that? I'm getting that right, aren't I, Sue? Yeah. So you can imagine the volume of work that creates. So I think there's 90-something sites awaiting average speed cameras currently. So we're pressing hard for ours to be top of the list.
any other? Sorry,
I was
Paul.
going to say, I appreciate what Charles has said there, but if they're getting 500 in an hour or whatever it was, surely that shows the need. And
Exactly.
Lady,
I'm living on Brickhill Drive, and we see it day in, day out. And
Yeah,
it's great to say, you know, we're going to do this. We've been waiting months and months, and yet no resolution. I find it incredible.
What's the process of them deciding who gets priority in terms of the next one to be delivered?
There's a process that looks at percentile speeds, accidents, locations to schools, a whole range of different criteria which examine.
And so how can we, is there any way we can help raise ours to the top of the list?
Well, it is at the top of the list.
It is at the top of the list and they're still not.
Yeah, it is at the top of the list. Yes.
Right.
Okay, anything else then on this item? Stuart?
I mean, is the problem that this is an average speed camera system and that therefore it is quite complicated? And would we not be, as an interim measure, better off by just having one single camera whilst we wait for the singing all bells, dancing average system?
I would probably suggest not, because I think that's going to complicate matters, I suspect.
You have to go through the whole process again.
Yeah.
I think I'd be very surprised if you haven't got a response in the next week soon. I'd be very surprised because I know that Alan was working on
Right.
trying to get some.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on this item then? No. Right. So we recognise, we all want it because
Thank you.
parish councils put money into this, the borough councils.
Yes,
as well.
I knew that one of the previous meetings.
Yeah.
So I got rather excited at one stage, but it's kind of a bit.
We're not forgetting about it at all.
Oh, no.
So,
Chairman, you haven't yet put money in, you're committed.
well, committed.
Committed.
So we're not the
But it's-
depositing.
It's allocated for this purpose. Not going to get used for anything else. Right.
We've allocated ours, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now to move on to item 7, to receive an update on the possible replacement of the wooden pigs in the pig park on Woodlands Park. How many parks can you get into one sentence? And pigs. So on this one, Sue, you were looking for potential suppliers.
Well, if you, I asked Michael to take a photo because it's literally near them, aren't they? I mean, they are, as we know, carved really, aren't they? The carved from lumps of wood.
Yeah.
I at first thought they were, you know, the assembled jobs.
They're probably unique in fairness.
Yeah, and I did ask him to look if there was any labels or anything on there. Usually, the carver usually puts something on, doesn't he, so other people can sort of follow up and say, well, we'd like some of those as well. But there's nothing on them.
So, I contacted Ed Burnett, who used to work for the Borough Council, who's into wood carving and the like, and I've had a response from him today saying that it's too big for him, but he knows some other wood carvers, and he's approaching them. I've sent him pictures as well of them illustrating the size and the scale, and also illustrating the current damage, the current state of play with those. So that's good actually.
But there's also other wooden little park things like the dragonfly one. I mean, that's also falling apart as well.
It is.
So it's not just the pigs.
No, indeed. And as we said, last time we discussed it at the last meeting, and to be clear, we said to Stephen Moon, who was here, we said, would you like to support it as well? And he was saying, well, there are other people also wishing to tap into his ward fund. So we need to try and bring it all together and try and come up with a proposition. Can I ask, sorry, come back in here.
But when I went for a walk around, we went around with Claire, and he was quite obvious that he had funds for us.
Yeah, okay. Can I just ask Stuart, sorry, just a quick question for Stuart, if I may, answer.
Yeah.
So what we've got, we've potentially got some parish council money. We've got the BPHA money, which we are looking after, and also queried the Whitson Tree Trust money, which Brickhill Community Association has got.
We acted as the patsy, yes, but I think we forwarded the money to you. I shall speak to Sue again tomorrow, but I'm sure this will be
Do you think you transferred it on to the parish council already?
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
Well.
Well, you asked me to.
I asked, oh right, you mean it's been done recently, you mean?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
It's not in the bank account as of a couple of days ago.
I will speak to Sue again tomorrow.
Because I think the problem we had right at the beginning was you've got the money, but we couldn't have the money moved into our account unless we had something to spend it on, because it had to be spent on equipment on Woodlands Park. So if she's transferred it recently, in the last day, I will not have seen that.
No, it's probably within the last week.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Alistair, did you?
Yeah, just a quick one. Regarding the wooden pigs, how long have they lasted, and how long are these ones going to last? I think that's a question. Do we really want to replace like with like, bearing in mind we know that the old ones are falling to bits?
I'm going to say 11 years.
Yeah.
Just looking to Chris as one of the first people in that area.
15, some of them.
That's a good life.
Biggest problem was they weren't ever weatherproof after initial install. They should have been maintained.
So that's sort of up to 15 years.
Yeah.
Good God.
But they've probably been falling to bits in the last couple of years. So.
Right, sorry.
I just think that they haven't been maintained. Had they been maintained, they would have lasted longer.
Okay. So you know what I'm going to say next, right? Are we building another maintenance issue? Bearing in mind we argue about cleaning the park bench across the road there because it's too expensive and too fiddly. So are we actually going to have a maintenance budget that we can accommodate looking after these things?
So at the minute we're saying we would be willing to fund something, but it's the Borough Council's play area. So we just sort of, I think we're looking at the art of the possible first of all, before we then go any further forward with that. So.
I mean, I should imagine any play equipment's only got that sort of lifespan, isn't it?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, absolutely. And the cost is the cost of the thing plus the maintenance over the period of time that you think is going to last. So we need to know what that is. Or if it is the borough going to do it, then they need to make sure that the borough's going to actually maintain it.
There's one of the play areas further down that's got a climbing frame and everything. I mean, that's lasted a long time. And the slide thing, I think that would be more better than these wooden pigs. I don't know.
No, it's part of the character of it's part of that area of Woodlands Park. I mean, you know, by the big park, you know, it's the, as daft as it sounds.
I understand your point, but I mean, we've got to think about
For the kids.
the age of the children
Yeah.
using it.
Yeah.
And maybe that play area is fine for the very small ones, whereas maybe when they're a bit bigger, they can move on to the slides or the climbing things.
And the bigs are quite big. I don't think the little kids will be able to even climb them.
Can I just
It's a
say,
big list as well.
it's kind of nice to actually have play areas that are made out of, wood
Use
rather
of.
than always made out of metal and stuff. And if we more greener, and I don't know how much wood is greener, but I think I like the idea, and I think with the name Woodlands Park, it's part of the character. And if we're saying it's about the maintenance and making sure that it's weatherproofed, then we should be asking the carver of that, and maybe asking what else we should be doing to keep it like that. And for whatever it costs, I think it's worth it for the aesthetics, is that the word, of it, rather than, I don't know, that's just me.
Right, anything else on pigs, wooden or otherwise? I do like wooden pigs personally. I quite like that in the dragonfly, but yeah. Anyway.
It's the only way anyone finds my house.
Works out for that. Sorry. Right, okay, let's move on if we may. So we're going to continue searching, we're going to come up with some options, and hopefully we'll reach out to Borough Council when you've got something more concrete, or not concrete, but got something more substantive to go on. Right, item number 9, to receive a report from the Borough Councillors. I've seen one circulated from the Brickhill Councillors. Thank you.
missed out on the break.
Did I? Oh yeah, I was jumping ahead. My apologies. Too keen. Right, to item 8, consider and agree additional funding to complete the resurfacing works in the Mowsbury Walk play area. Sue.
So I've circulated in supporting documentation, really the background of where we're at. We took it over back in January. The decision was taken to replace 3 bits of equipment and obviously resurface under those 3 bits. There are still 2 areas not resurfaced. That's the very large climbing frame and the toddlers, sort of springers and so on. And there has been, although there's been positive things said about play area, the comment is made, when are you going to do the others? And I do appreciate the others do look a bit of a mess. When we went out first time round, we struggled to get 3 quotes, but of the 3 we got, 2 did quote for this extra work, the 2 other areas to be resurfaced. And the difference in those is £200 between the more expensive and RPM, who have already done the work so far. They were the cheaper one, with a quote of £21,455. Although in theory 3 quotes should be sought, there is the allowance in financial regulations, and I interpret it to say that if there's work already been done, if work now constitutes an extension of that existing work, then that isn't, you don't necessarily have to try and get those 3. And I suspect that because we've already got RPM and done half of it, whatever happened, we probably have to go back to them for the rest in a way, because you're going to end up with the play area surfacing, half done by one company, half done by another. And the logic is it's done by the same company, really. And I think had we decided at the beginning to do the whole lot, then we would have ended up with RPM at that point anyway.
Can I propose that we go with the RPM option?
But you've still got to decide where the money's coming from, because it's not part of what you budgeted for, is it?
No.
Right.
Are we happy, so in principle, are we happy with the principle of going ahead with resurfacing the remaining part of the play area? Just to sort of
Yes, I am. Definitely.
Mowsbury, which one's that one?
here.
Behind
Just
you.
Oh, the one behind you. Why is it called Mowsbury?
It's on
Mowsbury
there.
Walk is the path that runs through the area.
Because it confuses people.
No, it just said Mouse Play Area. Sorry, but
Okay.
It's not near the pigs.
No, no big.
No big unfortunately. So, are we happy in principle to do that? So
Yes.
Sue's raised then the question of where do we get the money from?
do we have to do it now, or could we put it into next year's budget?
I think I would suggest that given the nature of this sort of work, it's helpful to try and push ahead with it, because that way we can get into the schedule for the contractors.
It may well be that they'll say it's too late in the year now.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the map round we've had recently. I don't know. We'd have to ask our PM.
I would suggest that what Sue is saying, having my previous hat on, and also because we're going into winter, the cold weather,
Yeah.
I think affects the weekend. So it might be that just coincidentally time will support what Catherine suggests. So
I can ask.
if not, where will the money come from?
I think there's somewhere you can get it from, but I just think it's
Well,
helpful.
there's capital reserve, isn't there?
Yeah. We've got various places we can dip into, I suspect, but just help if we can put an order in. I think it'd be useful just to appreciate the comments around timing because of the weather.
But I think by the time it's done,
Yeah.
I think it's actually right, and the invoice comes in, I think you probably would need to make financial year.
Yeah. So shall we say from reserves, and then we'll look at it when we get to the setting the new budget for the new year.
Yeah.
Right, so am I going to say to our PM,
Yeah.
we're going to accept the quote, when can you do it? Are you going to suggest waiting until, say, April next year, in which case you don't need to worry at the minute where it's coming from? What if they come back and say, well, actually, we can do it now? Do we go ahead? Take it from reserve, but you need to decide now where it's going to come from, aren't you? Which reserve?
If the weather's suitable for doing it, I would be, be happy for it to be done. Obviously, if it's tipping down the rain or 3 foot of snow, I wouldn't want it done there.
Well,
But
they won't do
otherwise,
it.
yeah. But if it's suitable,
Just to check, we did put reserves in the Waveney Greeny.
we've got various people.
So couldn't it come, if we're gonna take it out of reserves, wouldn't it come out of the outdoor parky Waveney Greeny and?
We can recast it later on, type of thing. We can check
Yeah.
it.
Well,
But
there's no requirement on the parish council that the reserves are fixed. You can move those reserves.
Yeah.
So if you decide, well, actually, we want to move it some from there to there, that's fine.
right.
So, okay.
So can we go
So
ahead,
leave it
place
for
the order,
reserve.
and then subject to when it gets done,
Yes,
Yeah.
we sort out
yes.
the finances.
Okay.
Right, thank you. So item number. make sure.
Is that agreed?
That is agreed, I think. Everyone's sort of nodding and I'm sorry, I'm not close, but yeah. Okay, right, so moving on to the next item. I'll make sure I'm on the right one. I'm not jumping ahead. Now, item number 9, to receive a report from the Borough Councillors, which has been circulated by Wayne and Charlie. Thank you for that. Have you received anything from the Great Barford Borough Councillors?
No, I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay. Do you want to talk to your report, Charlie? Wendy?
So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Any questions for Charlie Wendy?
I haven't had a chance to see it because I was in the planning meeting while that was being sent.
Okay.
I'll put it on the website.
Could it come out earlier?
Earlier. Could it come out earlier?
Could it, that was the question. Yeah, could it?
That's the question for the councillors.
I was just feeling really, really proud that we'd submitted one. But we can do our best. But I'm happy to answer any questions from councillors if you want to get in touch with me afterwards. There are some important items there, one of them specifically about finance, and people often think that Brickhill is a very affluent area, but there are lots of families who are struggling at the moment, and there is some financial advice in there which is quite helpful really at the end of universal credit bump and what have you.
And we'll put it on the website as we do anyway.
Okay.
So.
And if we get anything from the other borough councils, we can do the same. Right, shall we move on? Item number 10, to identify roads and pavements in Brickhill for inclusion on the Bedford Borough Council Future Highways Works. We said last time we could wander around the area looking for things that we thought were a priority, and then we'd come tonight and simply share that and formally submit that. I don't have any. I'm not going to mention my road. That would be inappropriate. Though I have had complaints about the pavement from other residents. Anyone else want to volunteer any other answer?
Could I just see if I get support for this idea? There are some cycle routes that have been signposted and labelled within the borough, one of which runs from Woodlands to town and obviously back again the same way. There's a couple of bits in there. One specific example is the Avon Drive piece, where you're expected to join the road again. So it's off-road mainly and quiet roads. It's all good, but there's a couple of bits which are on busy roads. Now, there's a footpath on Waverley Green by Avon Drive, which, apart from the fact it could usefully be resurfaced because it's pretty lumpy. My suggestion is that there are certain specific areas like that one which could be, in the fullness of time, turned into dual-use cycle paths and pavements, because at the moment it's a pavement you're not supposed to ride on it. And actually, just by doing a couple of very small ones, there's another similar one, even smaller up on Tyne Crescent, you could kind of legalise the route and keep it off the road altogether and make it a bit easier for people to actually get across the road. Because at the moment, if you're coming out of town, you come up Dove Road, you're then expected to turn left on Avon Drive and then to turn right at the roundabout to get along Waverley Avenue going up towards Woodlands. And that's a pretty busy roundabout for someone on a bike, frankly. And the only alternative you've got is to somehow cut across onto the pavement, which of course is then not legal. So my suggestion is, if we're doing any of this, could we just be mindful of the cycle routes that we've got? And I think with a fairly small and targeted amount of spend, we could probably, I don't know what the process is for legally changing the status of these things, we could make a difference for people getting around and keeping them off the road, which I think makes a big difference for people on bikes.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm not sure whether this has been raised before. I suspect it has, but the footpaths on Tyne Crescent where the tree roots are affecting them. I only say that because I tripped over one today. So, but they're pretty.
Which part of Tyne Crescent?
From if you come out of West Brickway and turn right towards the roundabout, it's down there. Where the tree roots have broken the path up, it's quite. I mean, if I fall on it, it's my fault, right? But if the kid falls on it, then it's a different thing.
Now, obviously, last time we had a petition from residents of Rhineland, way. So I presume we've got that one logged. Are there any other roads that people are really calling out?
Could we ask Peter to comment on the suggestions being made by Alistair? I'd be interested because it sounds like a very good suggestion. And speak to see what since we've got the person who runs Bedford Cycling, it would be helpful to have a comment. I think.
If you look at the cycle network that was published 5-6 years ago, what Alistair has said was actually the route. And on the cycling officer's comments, he in fact said in those two instances just mentioned that the pavements had to be widened and made dual use. But in the interim, he did put them down as illegal routes for the cyclists. Actually on the original.
But it's not been done. It's
not been done. There's a whole range of improvements that should be done and never have been done on the whole network.
Thank you, Peter. So, in terms of that's obviously a bit out of tangent from the simple resurfacing. Sorry, are you indicating?
Yeah. Answer what you're saying there. No,
Well, I'm just saying that, that's obviously a bit of tangent from the simple, what roads need to be resurfaced, what footpaths need to be resurfaced, but
yeah, I was just going to add the footpath between the Tyne Crescent roundabout and that goes along the side into Woodlands Park, areas of that is looking a bit worse for wear. You know what I mean? The one that goes...
along Ashmead, you mean?
Not that goes around Ashmead, the one that goes at the back towards the Karen Road estate. It goes along the side.
Perimeter path type thing.
Sorry?
I would call it like a perimeter, the A. Goes around
Yeah,
the
yeah.
and gets that area.
Parts of that are looking a bit nice.
That was a very that obviously was cracking up, and that was one of the things that was delaying the adoption at one point, because it was cracking, perpetually cracking, because of such a rubbish job made when it was when it was actually laid in the first place.
I think they've just put some things over the crack bit this year, but it still looks really bad.
Stuart?
Yeah, on the subject of tree root damage, I mean, the pavement on Kimbolton Road between Brickhill Drive and Park Avenue, it's got very substantial tree root damage. It's quite hazardous, but what you can do about it, I don't know, because it's quite obvious the council have tried to do something and the tree roots have just cut through them. So I mean, I don't know whether I think we need some kind of radical solution for that. But, unfortunately, fortunately, the trees are more important than the football, aren't they?
Right. So we've got some ideas there. We can submit those. Are we happy to submit all those comments? Okay. Shall we move on then? Next item. Item 11, to consider the possible locations for electric vehicle charging points to be suggested to Bedford Borough Council. Again, we said last time we will come back to this meeting and give people time to think about it, and if they have any ideas, we can put it forward. Anyone want to comment? I've got a couple of suggestions if people want to...
I did email a reply.
Did I see them?
Yeah, remember we spoke about it a couple of
Okay. Do you want to talk to your email? I haven't got it.
I can't remember what I said now. And I missed the last meeting, so... I mean, one way I suggested... I mean, are we talking rapids or fast chargers?
Both.
Both. I mean, to me, an obvious place for a rapid charger would be the Mowsbury car park, the one on Kimbolton Road, possibly.
What about the shops?
Yeah.
The Mowsbury car park's been rejected, unfortunately, by
Has
the
it?
Fine, BP.
Just the supply is not good.
Have to get the power down.
I've pulled up your email, Michael. You've got me quite a few.
Yeah, I know.
No, I mean in a good way. So you've got Mowsbury, you've got Woodlands Park, car park as well, and then you've included West Road End with Ashmead Road and Brickhill Drive outside Pilgrim and Avon Drive near Waverley Green. That's what you suggested, and the football club.
Yeah, I saw. Still
Yeah.
talking about
That's not Brickhill.
Say Brickhill.
It's a good idea though.
Falcon Avenue.
Sorry?
Falcon Avenue. Because a lot of cars do park there, but it's a road that even if you did leave your car overnight, it's still not going to block anybody's house.
So I think part of the problem is I think when you're looking at locations, it's trying to work out, well, people who've got their own driveway are very likely to be able to do it from their own drive. So you think about people who don't have that. Now, how many people will be living in the flats, say, how many people will live in flats and have an electric vehicle? I don't know, but I would suggest places like in Torridge Rise, adjacent to the flats, opposite the bungalows, places where there's potential demand and also not too much parking already. So you're not...
Torridge Rise, you lose a lot of parking for the flats, because a lot of the people in the flats do park.
Well, not heavily parked though. If you look at that road, going on quite often, it's not 100%. Seven Way is, but not Torridge. The other location I'm suggesting would be the area, it's technically an Avon Drive, but it's at the top end of Humber Avenue really, near the bungalows. There's a patch there.
I put them all in, I put the whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're going to turn down most of them anyway.
Because I want electric.
I said they'll probably turn down a lot of them because they'll say the grid's not good enough, so you may as well give them a good
No, no, it'd be good enough for fast chargers, but not the rapid chargers. And rapid chargers.
Brickhill Drive shops for a fast charger, because that's quite accessible, not just for the people in, but I'm just thinking there's a lot of people who work around that area who might use that.
If you put one there, would it remove capacity to park, like normal cars to nip to the shops? Would that mean, would you be there long enough to plug it in?
No.
There's just,
To warrant it being there? I don't know.
it's hard enough getting a parking space there sometimes.
Yeah,
It's
with
just hard.
with a fast charger, it needs to be somewhere where you're going to be sitting there for. I mean, on a fast charger, my car takes 4 hours, so you know, which is why I charge it overnight at the house. But it's more for, I would say, fast chargers in our area, probably more for people visiting in the area than actually living in it. I would say generally. I mean, yes, I get what you're saying about people in flats and that. I mean, the community centre, as another example, the community centre, that car park's not used during the day most of the time.
It depends.
I'm guessing.
No, depends on times because of the when it's in full. I mean, it's true, it's here, but when it's in full supply, that community centre is a busy place.
When we used to have our office there, Monday, for example, Bridge is in and the car park is packed and all down Avon Drive is parked. And similarly on Monday, there's quite a lot of things go on and the car park is chocker. Because there's not many spaces actually when you think about it for the groups that are in. Not all the time, of course, but
it's the quieter roads in Brickhill that we should be
What
targeting.
about further up near One Stop? I mean, they've got that sort of pub thing at the end that's not a pub anymore, is it? So maybe. It's in a closed or is it still open?
Avon Drive.
Yeah.
We've put Avon Drive forward.
Right.
Well, I am. Where is that?
So in Woodlands Park, did you suggest the end near the Westcote Way junction with Ashton?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of areas where it's not going to actually affect parking and such. If someone leaves it there.
That's a good shout, that one.
Yeah.
And the bit near the Owl Park, again, that entrance, not necessarily in the car park, but on the road itself. Because again, it's not too heavily parked by cars.
But then again, in the car park, that car park's never going to be fully used, is it? Except maybe on when the football's on.
Makes more sense to put it in the car park.
Yeah.
So we
But
can
then
always
it's
go
locked.
off the
But
road.
then it's locked overnight. So if you want to charge overnight, if you're visiting the
Not at the
estate,
minute,
Not at the minute.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But we also need to spread them around Brickhill
Yeah, yeah.
because so far we've got quite a few this end of Brickhill, but none down like by End Way and going towards Brickhill Driveway. We haven't, so we need to think of that, which is why Falcon Way would be useful. But also we might need to do somewhat near to Bedford Park as well, that part of Brickhill.
Yeah, I mean, I suggested the lay-by on Brickhill Drive as a location for.
Yeah, that's.
Because if someone's going in the park that way, they park there and charge up.
So the other idea is if we take what Nick sent in before, my apologies for not having that in front of me.
So I've not got it in front of me either.
No, not that, I had other comments. Is that sufficient? It sounds like John already put some load in, so anyway.
The problem is if you put them in somewhere and people reject it, they have violence done to the you'll know people get angry with the electric car, they do violence to the cars and violence to the posts and so it is a difficult.
I've not actually heard of that, to be honest.
No.
You know, that's one of the reasons why the bays that are being introduced in the town centre in the first place didn't. Sorry, Chair, can I?
Yeah.
Well, why they didn't put a formal no parking thing there at the outset because of the anger to create. This is what Street Connected Care, their experience has been that the best thing to do is to put them in without the formal restrictions to start off with, just so it becomes accepted by the community, and then you put the formal restrictions in a bit later because of the big smashing of posts and all kinds of things. You know. So you try to find places where it's not going to upset people, deprive people who need to park. But we've all got to look to the future when there's going to be a lot more electric cars and we're all going to need these these things a lot more.
As you say, most people will have them at home for their own purposes, but it's just for the people that can't do it. I mean, has the borough looked into like lamppost charges and that sort of thing now?
They're looking into whole
Okay. Anything else on that item? Should we move on? Okay, item 12 then, to note the existence of the Bedford Freight Strategy document and to receive any update on the action taken and the progress of the conversion. So Alistair in particular has been focusing on this one.
Yes, I dropped an email to Andrew Prigmore. This was a thing about, remember the debate we had a good few sessions ago now about potential weight restrictions in Brickhill. Feedback from that was that actually they just confused people and they're probably going to get ignored anyway, so that wasn't really considered to be a starter. So the thinking behind all this was, are we happy with the amount of heavy goods traffic that's passing through Brickhill, and is there anything we can do about it? And I think the answer to the question was no, we're not really happy with the amount of heavy goods traffic that's passing through Brickhill, so let's try and find some things that might ameliorate that. So there was, first of all, there was the freight strategy document, which I do not believe has been updated yet. So I've asked about that. The current one expires this year. Getting some signage on the exit to the Manton Lane facilities, indicating people turn right and go down the hill towards the bypass rather than turn left and come through Brickhill. But also the potential for something which is not a problem yet, but it might become, and that was a nighttime ban for HGVs. The policy appears to be from the borough that if there's a problem that exists, then they might think about doing something to ameliorate that problem. However, my approach is to say we don't have a problem yet. We want to stop one happening in the future, and we want to see what options that we can have around controlling that. Now, there's been various debates in the past about freight monitoring systems and plans. However, I've not heard anything back from Andrew yet, and I've sent him a couple of emails, but I haven't heard anything. So that was just a quick summary of where we are with it. But there's nothing coming back in terms of what that freight strategy document is yet. So I might be asking for people to assist with giving him a prod to see if there's anything going on. Certainly don't want to see a freight strategy suddenly appear, which suddenly has Brickhill Drive down as a main route for freight, which it isn't at the moment. So, things like that, just trying to be a bit prepared for it.
So do you want that prod now, or do you want that prod later?
No, I think it's been enough time to consider a response. So if we're ever going to get a response to the email, it would be nice to know where it is in the list.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this item? Catherine?
Question, did you say that the borough is saying there's not an issue of freight coming through this way?
No.
That's their take on it?
No, the borough's not expressed an opinion about freight at all, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, because I see a lot of the vans that go down Mountain Lane, come down this way. So for me it's an issue because they're quite big and they don't drive slowly, they're quite fast down. And they are industry, so for me it's an issue.
Right.
But how do we have to now locate, or do we have to, what do we need to do to highlight our concerns about the amount of lorries that come this way? Because for starters, to have that sign that say no heavy HGV coming this way would be quite useful as a starter. Because linear way I don't think was ever meant for fast or lorries.
No, I haven't received any feedback from the questions I put in at all. The gist of the conversation, if I can kind of paraphrase it a bit from memory, seemed to be in favour of vehicle movements in general, right across the piece, heavy goods, delivery vans, cars. It seemed to be it's better to let it happen because of the economic benefits, and everybody wants to shop online and blah blah blah, all this kind of stuff. So I think there was a general, the feeling that I got was that they were generally reluctant to impose a restriction, and if there was a restriction, it would be whether it would be an enforceable restriction or not. So you're kind of going through that debate at the moment. But I think we certainly have got, it's not an issue, but I mean, I think, you know, one of the things that is a little bugbear for me is the growing beds recycling thing up Sunderland Hill, which is attracting traffic from all over the country, or certainly all over the region, which is just driving through Brickhill, dumping off stuff and driving back again. You know, so at least the K-Rad people is a local business, whereas this other one is kind of like importing stuff from we don't know where and
Yeah,
from.
but they're an online shopper, so they're just supplying the same thing instead. But it's just about maybe, I don't mind them having a business there, but it's just restricting the traffic, and because they're very early drivers. The lorries are not late, they're quite early in the morning.
Yeah.
So they're like, 4 or 5 in the morning, so it's about that kind of noise, that time of morning. So if we had a time restriction type thing to it as well.
Yes.
I mean, never had the opportunity to express my, I'm only giving them as an example because their lorries are well advertised, but there's lots of other industries that are based there that use this as a shortcut to going on to the A428. So it's just an example, but it is an issue. And I know that some of the lorries used to park on Time Crescent as well. That was because I used to get some complaints from a certain gentleman who used to live there of lorries parking down, not Time, but Curlew Crescent side.
So I agree with Alistair. I think if the strategy is due to run out this year, I think we are better to be proactive about putting in or making recommendations too, rather than have nothing or at worst something that doesn't benefit Brickhill and doesn't discourage the heavier traffic to go on more of the A road. So I think you're on the right lines there. It's a shame we haven't had a response.
Yeah, it's a response we're missing. I think from what people have been saying, I think that kind of gives me a bit more reassurance that what I'm trying to do is the right thing. It's just a question of getting some feedback back so we can work with it, really.
And we got your back.
So, any other comments there?
Just broaden the topic slightly. The trade strategy is one of 8 supporting documents in the borough's local transport plan number 3, which expires this year. 2 years ago, the borough did say that they were going to start updating it for local transport plan number 4. When I contacted them a few months ago to ask them what the status of it was, they said they hadn't even started thinking about it because of the pandemic and shortage of staff and so on and so forth.
Can I suggest there is the next Parish and Town Council network meeting with the borough is on the 4th of November. We've been asked to send in questions in advance by the 22nd of October, and one of the 2 speakers there, the relevant, is John Shortland, who's the Chief Planning and Construction and Economic Growth Officer, and also Matthew Darchan Bow, I don't know how to say his surname, who's Chief Officer for Transport, Highways and Engineering. So it would perhaps be a good way to put that on the table.
Yeah, excellent idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll also say, put a plug in for attending that meeting if people are free on the 4th of November.
Unfortunately, it's the same day as our next parish council.
Sorry, apologies. I didn't mean to hear that. It's a higher table. Sorry. I haven't really looked forward into November much to see what's happening. Okay, 4th of November, there we go. That's a bit of a shame, isn't it? Okay, so much for that idea.
I'm happy to attend that Parish and Town Council meeting instead, and I'll send apologies for this. If you're going to put that in as a question, then somebody needs to be there, right? Otherwise,
I think it'd be appropriate. We should all go, really. So,
leave a quorum behind.
Okay, anything else on this item?
Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. Item number 13. 16, which is to receive an update with policing in Brickhill. Just information really. There have been 2 meetings recently which I attended, and I think Alistair was in. I'm not sure whether Sudesh was in one of them. I thought I saw a name. Yeah. I didn't catch anyone else's. So we had on the 28th of September, we had what's called the Yellow Cluster meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner, where he's meeting with virtually Zoom meetings type of thing with parishes all around the county. So we're in the Yellow Cluster along with Biddenham, Great Denham, Kempston, bit of an odd collection. So it was a bit of a chat. Mostly him speaking, and one of his members of staff. I didn't take away much from that. I did complain about the lack of the engagement meetings which we used to have, priority setting meetings. Obviously we've had our ongoing issues with them not attending any of our meetings. I don't think I learned a great deal from that. Alistair, I don't know if you want to, you're looking at notes.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned a lot of focus on the force control room. He seemed to think it was under-resourced and under-skilled, basically. So he's building that up, and this is in response to people telling him that dialing 101 was a waste of time. And apparently the improvements are in plan. He mentioned a lot about recruiting more officers, but also mentioned the retention. They've got some of the worst retention of all the forces, I believe, is what I've noted. And just playing to your point, he's talking about community policing, which is the sort of thing that we used to get with the objective setting and all that kind of stuff, trying to build that back up again. How successful that will be, I don't know.
Thank you.
I just had a question linking to the speed cameras. Was it an opportunity to bring issues from Brickhill to that meeting?
Yeah, we
and
mentioned
did we
it.
raise the fact that the police are still not answering us about the speed
Yeah, I was going to
cameras?
mention that on the you're going to mention the next meeting, which was the one that was the other night.
So that's the first meeting. The second meeting was the annual Parish Council conference, which is normally Police and Crime Commissioner has been holding for the last 5 years. Obviously, we have a new commissioner in place now. Again, it was virtual, and so the representatives there from across the county, from town and parish councils. I've got to say, PCC himself spent a lot of time talking. We didn't get through as many, and then we had officers also presenting from different parts of the county. So it was it Chief Inspector Mowsbury or Inspector Mowsbury? It's coming with his official title.
I didn't notice rank, but it was Mowsbury who does Bedford.
He's the guy covering, representing, if you like, from the borough perspective. And they gave some interesting stuff about what they've done in Chandler's Court, dealing with basic criminality in those premises, which is very encouraging, and no doubt for the residents of Chandler's Court in Harper. It was a particular problem which they dealt with well, and worked with BPHA, which is really good. But apart from that, we didn't get on to electric. Moses was going to talk about e-scooters, but he was told to shut up because they ran out of time, and it didn't get covered in the questions.
Yeah, just going back to the questions that came in from councillors were at least half of them were all about speed cameras. Why haven't we got them? We're on the list, we don't know where the list is, we don't know what the criteria are. And there was also almost a game of top trumps where people were saying they have speed indicator boards like we have. And somebody was saying, oh yeah, I've seen 50 miles an hour. And it's like, oh no, in our parish we've got 80 miles an hour. And then there was another one that said, but we've seen one at 102 miles an hour. So it was racking up. But the gist was the conversation that we had earlier about we want them, and in our case we're prepared to pay for them, but the others don't have the money to pay for them. We want them, we need them, we feel we're fully justified in having them, but we don't know where we are in the list. We don't know if we're ever going to get them, because we don't know what the criteria are. The criteria might mean we're actually never going to get them, in which case we need something else. But that really came back, very widely from the people who were on that call. So we're by no means unique in our experience. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. I mean, my own personal observation of him was I thought he talked a good game. I thought he seemed quite capable and motivated and engaged and quite realistic about the nature of what a police force actually is and the kind of issues that you may get with some of the people that you've got. It's a slightly strange role because it's not supposed to be operational. You know, it's supposed to be setting and direction, I guess, policy. But he very much, some of the things he's sort of talking about is very much getting into the nitty-gritty of directing how things are working out, which I felt, so I think there's maybe a bit of a interesting dynamic between, no doubt, him and the Chief Constable. And I was a bit sorry, I'm going to restrain my language here. Various people are coming out with saying things like, I've read a book. When people start saying, I've read a book, and then start talking about, a particular issue, my heart only sinks when I hear that. And that happened a few times. But it was interesting that I'm certainly aware that in some parts of the county, these priority setting meetings are taking place. We just don't seem to have taken place. We're lumped in with Harper and De Paris, and for whatever reason it's not been happening here. And we raised that in the meeting, the first one. Yes.
So it was taken away as an action by the chap from the PCC's office. So
Wayne Humberston.
To be fair to the police, they have been out with Wendy and I looking at priorities that we feel should be addressed in the community, and have asked us for priority areas. We've supported them in continuing to tackle drugs issues, which are quite serious. So there hasn't been an absence completely, although the meetings that we used to have were very, very useful, and because of COVID they haven't taken place for a long time.
Yeah. So that's anything else on that item? If not, should we move on? Thank you very much. So on to item 14, to review and agree the code of conduct. So you have in your notes, you pointed out that there's no change, and there's something like that.
There was a review now at least a year ago where councillors were asked to make comments on the current code of conduct. Now I don't know where we're at with the review from that, but we work with what we get from the National Association of Local Councils now.
Yeah.
So we go with what their legal departments provide. So we agree the code of conduct each year and just really date the fact that we've noted the fact it's not changed.
Okay, happy to note that?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And item 15, to review and agree with financial regulations. Similar.
Yeah, same again really. We use the model code, model financial regulations that are provided by NAUC, and when they offer us a new model or a change, then we adapt it, take that on. The last change was really relating to back payments, because in the old regs we weren't allowed to do back payments. Well, of course, everything's moved on. Most councils have moved on from cheque payments, so the financial regulations have to change accordingly. But there's been no other big major changes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask a small question? Sure. With the current increase of people trying to steal money from councils, and with people like Luton Borough losing £1 million pounds, paying the wrong people, what do we have in place in terms of to make sure that we paying the right, we do the right bucks?
We check about 60 times the sort code and the account code before we press send, really. There's not a lot, and what I do certainly is, if I get a large invoice for something to be paid, I often phone the company up and double check that invoice is theirs, because that is where we've had problems, not us, but there have been problems where invoices have got the right letterhead and everything looks okay, and in fact you're paying somebody else. So I often do, and often companies sort of say to you, well, why are you phoning this up? I say, well, I just want to double check that we're paying £16,000 to you and we're not paying somebody else. So it's really double checking what we do, really.
And you should get their phone number from a different document from the invoice.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I'll go from an invoice that we have paid usually, and I'll, you know, that's gone through and everything's fine, and then I will call that number, yeah. I don't just phone off the number on the invoice, no. But there's not many things we pay that we don't know the sort code already, or we don't know the people we pay it.
We normally pay in small amounts for under £1 million almost.
Yes, yeah.
No, just don't say.
I always send £1 first, and then I
Yeah,
send
that's
£2,
what we
and eventually you get to £20 and 20,000. Yeah, I do it in little steps.
I just wondered if they could lose that amount of money. Just we spend smaller.
Don't go sleep tonight.
What Sue said sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So thank you. So we're all happy with that then?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 16, correspondence. Sue has sent out various emails on different topics. First one is this email letter from EWR inviting us to send a representative to a meeting on the 19th of October between 6:15 and 7:30 or thereabouts, I think they're saying. And it's meeting at Y Boston.
But it can be virtual as well. So yeah, they're going to send that out. And what they've said is obviously one representative, and then there are rules about actually going if you're going to actually turn up on the night. But they've also said anything has to be sent in advance by the 15th of October. So any questions you're going to raise that have not already been dealt with in previous venues. So whoever goes will need to either come up with those questions.
So Mike volunteered to attend. I said I was happy to attend as well. I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I'll be happy. But if Mike is happy to do it, still want to do it, Mike?
After all, I am a one-trick pony.
I'm sure there's more tricks.
So I'll let them know.
Well,
Yeah.
people are aware of the public meeting that's happening on the 15th, lunchtime, I think. MP Yassin Mohammed has shared that, just for interest. That's an individual, you can turn up there, haven't said anything. Just need to ring Yassin's office to get your name on the door.
They want to check that everybody is a Yassin constituent.
Oh, you, okay, so that's
probably
not.
check. So Woodlands Park.
Woodlands Park wouldn't be.
But,
if you have questions, I'm happy to go on your behalf.
yeah.
I'm a Yassin's constituent. Just saying.
So in terms of points to be sent in by the 15th of October then, to that meeting at Y Boston, I was trying to read through the email and the points that they said they're going to cover. I guess the only, I mean, apart from where are they and what they're going to do next, in general terms, I know people have commented about the fact they had people out in the fields counting pedestrians, walkers going through the fields.
This time of the year.
It's a while ago.
They put some cameras up
Funny, isn't it?
2 days ago.
And they had cameras and
It's
had
not
people, didn't
used,
they?
is it?
Sorry.
Catherine was asking a question.
It's the wrong time of the year.
No, this is going back a month or two, where it was a bit warmer.
It was during school summer holidays,
Yeah.
which is also nuts, if you ask me, and midweek, rather than the weekend. So yeah, things like that would
So,
quite be.
and my question would be, you know, what weight are they going to give to any of those sort of numbers that they've captured?
I mean, I'm happy if people have questions, if they want to email them to me, I'll pose them. And
Thank you.
Yeah, well, just because we have talked about this whole footpath thing before, right? And I'm deeply suspicious of this survey.
yeah,
Because I believe it's specifically arranged to say, for them to allow them to say, no one's using these footpaths, so we can cut them and not replace them,
Yeah.
right? And the consensus of the council, I think I can speak for what we talked about before, was that we want to see improved access. And some of these areas where, like, a footpath suddenly stops in the middle of nowhere, or a driveway turns into a footpath that turns into nothing. You know, we wanted to try and fix some of those problems that we've already got, not make it worse, because we don't think it's good enough now. We don't want to make it, allow people to make it worse, right? So I think that is an issue that needs to be put up for this meeting. I don't know if it, because I think that is a new thing. They're on here, they're talking about what have you got that's new, and I think that is new, because we've asked about that before. And I lost questions with the consultation, and they said, oh, we've got no plans, we're not doing anything about it. And then the next thing you know, they're doing a survey, so actually they are doing something.
Yeah. Any other points that people want to see raised at that meeting? By the way, I'm deeply cynical then at any meetings from on that topic, because it's a very strict PR operation that I'm seeing.
Absolutely, PR operation.
So, any other comments? Anyone? Any thoughts we should be raising? Just to.
Can we just email you if we've got questions to? I'd like to see some more environmental information.
Environmental information.
Yeah, that's not come out.
Sorry, the what information?
Environmental information.
Oh, okay.
There hasn't been an environmental study yet, either comparative of the original routes or of the route they've selected. That's what's going on at the moment.
Yeah.
They've got back people up at Clapham Parkwood and stuff at the moment.
Right, anything else on this item on that one? Okay, thank you. And Sue, you're noting that there's a street trading consent application for dessert.
Pink van thing that
Yeah.
I passed tonight.
Oh, yeah,
In
About
Fulham
ice
and
creams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
what is that?
That,
it's basically instead of the daytime ice cream van, it's go along and get some ice creams or hot puddings or whatever, full of sugar and
you get
calories.
you come out with
It's
some huge
good
things.
It's about £7-8 for a pudding. It's
Yeah.
like, why would you do
Is it?
that?
No.
It's in our report,
Perspective.
it's in our report, Chair, the information about it, and if you've got... I mean, I've not had any objections to it
No,
from any
because
residents.
You
In
was,
fact, quite the opposite, people say it's quite nice.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
so.
because he was there during the pandemic, he had short term.
Tonight he was there when I drove past
Good
Fulham.
stuff though.
I should have brought some along as a sample.
To decide if it was
Sugar and
Okay,
it's
so other things, Kennett Rise temporary order of highways consultation, you mentioned that one email.
Well,
It
yeah.
was about Borough Council asking for our views on how
I
to
think
improve
this
services.
is an important one, isn't it? What I'm going to do is gather together all my parish's comments, because I think I find a lot of the same comments, you know,
And
mainly
there's,
about lack of response, mainly.
there's a request for seats in the bridal path leading up to Antifa Court from somebody at the court.
I think it's
Or linked to it.
yeah. I think it's a relative of a resident at Angelita Court saying that when they go out, you know, for a walk, obviously the residents are not particularly fit and there's nowhere to sit.
Yeah.
There's no seats. You walk down the main avenue and there's nothing there. So that's what's being mentioned, I think.
Again, when we went for a walk with Claire and Councillor Moon, that was actually put in place that they were going to have 2 benches there.
I think Stephen Moon mentioned it at the last meeting.
He did.
It-
I thought
yeah,
it was
it
referring
was-
more to the
it was
park
spoken
than the
about.
actual
Yeah.
behind. But
And Claire was quite happy to fund one of them benches because she said she saw 2 people sitting on like the wooden bit there, that, you know, the bit of
and Claire is who is Claire?
was it Claire or was it?
Is she an officer?
Yes, she was the actual officer who walked around with us.
Okay.
And she was happy to fund one of the benches there because she said that was ideal for people to come out of home and actually sit there.
Well, can we pass that comment on to her to just emphasise that there has been a request?
Yeah, and she wanted to know if there was going to be other funding, if we wanted to upgrade what she was going to put there on the last email. So I don't know, we didn't get anywhere.
No. Okay. Can you follow that one up if we can find out who Claire is?
Have you
her
got an
contact
email?
details?
Suggestion?
Yes, I have. I can
Do you want
forward
to
you.
send it to me?
Yeah.
And then I can send.
Good. So there's an email from the Stop the Arc group, which is the Oxford to Cambridge Arc. Email from Brickhill Primary, asking about with local history.
So said
Well,
yesterday.
I haven't seen either of those. Did they get sent out?
Sorry?
Did those two get sent out? I don't think I saw them, did they?
It was from Ben Bradshaw, I think deputy head at Brickhill Primary. I did email it out asking if anybody had any knowledge of, because Stuart replied to me.
Knowledge of
Of
Brickhill
local history here, yeah. Going back before, I suppose, Brickhill largely was built, I suppose they're interested in.
Okay, because it was, on my deeds it says it was an apple farm. My bit of Brickhill anyway.
So I think I've missed that Brickhill primary one as well.
Okay, I'll email it back out. I think really they want to develop a curriculum, the history curriculum, thinking well identify local history, local to the children at school.
So we've had stuff before, Stuart's been involved with finding information about the Foster family, hence Foster's Brow, which is, I think, Stuart's suggestion way back when, I recall. And also this history of there's lots of stuff in the local press when the shops opened, Brickhill Drive shops opened in particular, and the pub opened, Ferdinand. It's got some quite nice stuff in the archives, in the county archives, which is worth them
I also mentioned Mowsbury Walk Fort, of course. Hill Fort.
Yeah.
They may have, and friends of Parkwood and other people like that may have background information.
Okay. And the last item you mentioned there is about the update on the speed cameras, which we've covered already. Okay. And the final item is the AGM for the BATPC, Bedfordshire Association of Town and Parish Councils, which didn't take place last year but is taking place this year, and that's in Henlow. Normally, I think we're allowed 3 voting representatives from the parish. I think I'm planning to attend. I'd like to attend. I'll put it that way. Sorry, probably. Anyone else wishing to attend?
Well, I ought to go, I think.
I think so too.
What night is it?
What night? Wednesday. It's Wednesday, 7:30. Alistair is a member of the county committee. Which is good of him to do that. Well done. Anyone else want to come along? I'm not sure, I can't remember who the speaker is. Normally they have 1 or 2 speakers and
One of them, isn't it Will Gallagher from East West Railway? One of these.
Oh, God.
again.
So we're talking about PR exercise.
I think it's this one actually, the one at Henlow Park Pavilion. Him and then somebody else. I don't know who the other one. That just rung a bell.
Can I come and heckle?
Sure. Well, I take that's a volunteer. He's volunteering. Mike is volunteering, so that's fine. So it's a non-gender balanced panel, though. I'm just saying that. Is there any ladies who might be? Sorry. Anyone else wish to go along?
There's always a couple of slots on the committee
yes.
if you want to be on the committee.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul, was that a yes?
It's a half term.
So that's the time for doing.
That's the time to be away.
Yeah. Fine. Okay. All right. If you're happy for us 3 to go, then fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
No objection.
Outstanding matter. Item 17. Outstanding matters. Separate attachment. Anything to talk to you on that one?
Well, the only one I was going to mention was the tree, switch on of the lights. I've obviously put information in supporting documentation. I was trying to avoid links clashing with Kempston Town because we hope to get the lights and they're going there already on Tuesday, so obviously we don't want that. My contact has retired, but you've now got your contact, so I'm hoping they're going to come back because I gave them those 4 dates as possibilities. 1st, 6th, 8th or 9th, mainly because I then can go back to the schools and say it's this day. I contacted Brickhill and Scott. I didn't know whether Thomas Moore, whether Paula could advise on that. I suspect because there's not that many children probably from Brickhill at Tommy Moore, is there? Oh, there are. I only think because obviously we've got, So, is there an option that they want to take part, do something?
I like to. Have you got like information about it that I can pass on?
As much as we've just said, or we will say tonight. So the first thing we've got to come up with is a day. I'm hoping the Lions will come, because they bring Father Christmas on this sleigh, so that's quite key. Then usually what happens is Brickhill Primary and Scott Primary sing a song or two, so something linked to that, or it can be played with music, or we're building up from literally walking and switching them on, which we did first year. Second year we had somebody pretending to be Father Christmas in his pyjamas who turned up and it was pitch black, you couldn't see. Then we built up now to the Lions, and then we've had a few years off because of COVID, so we're gradually trying to make it a little bit more exciting as the years go by. So basically that, I'm going to talk.
Do I have to declare an interest because I'm a lion?
No, I don't think we're fine now.
Then St Thomas More, we find the 9th tricky.
Would they? So that's okay, but that's why I'm trying to narrow down the nights, really. So the 9th wouldn't work. But if you can ask somebody at Apollo to let us know what, you may know who looks after music, that Tommy will. And then we worried last time about music and about being able to hear things, because it was very difficult. So I've talked to Dave Todd, because he wants to use the green on the 12th, that's for a joint carol service, 12th of December. I spoke to him about, did he have anything that perhaps we could use? So he's come back and said he's got all the equipment we need. Excellent. So that's good. And it even come and set it up for us, that'd be nice. And he said, I'm sure we can find some singers, supply a musician or backing tracks for the carols. So I'm actually going to meet him on Monday just to find out what he means by we've got everything you need. And then by then hopefully we've got the Lions to come back with a day. Yeah, no, I can go to the schools with a day, and then we're moving on. And then we'll have to decide what happens then after that in November.
In terms of the contribution, it's sort of short and sweet really. It's not looking for a half an hour performance. It's just simply, as Sue said, one or two pieces.
Yeah, especially if it's raining.
Yeah, and bear in mind it is it is quite dark on the grass. So.
One or two pieces of.
Yeah, sounds good. And then you can play by ear. If it rains, we go quicker.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean we're open. I'm sure it'd be very odd if all three schools came up with the same carol, wouldn't it? That'd be really.
We've got some lighted board that we use for fitness. The battery powered.
Yeah, because I bought a couple. We built it with no lights and everybody in the dark. We bought a few, didn't we, last time? So yeah, I mean, the more the merrier is it.
Right. Anything else on the Astani practice?
No, I think that's in terms of what we can deal with. Yeah.
On the ponds.
Oh.
Did somebody fall in recently?
Yeah.
Was that the pond or a ditch?
I don't know too much about it, but there's a young child or something that I think where it's overgrown, they somehow stumbled into a ditch or something, but they had to be physically dragged out. The member of the public saw them and got them out. I mean, it's been on the thing for a long time about them being overgrown and that. Is there any progress on what's going to happen?
I don't know. We did have it listed as a job reference, didn't we? But we'd heard no more about it. And I think at the time, Charles was going to find out a little bit about what was happening about clearing the ponds. I mean, this does go back quite a long time now.
Yeah, I mean, a number of people are coming and saying about it, that it's badly overgrown, because I didn't room for any water.
Which pond? The one?
Well, both of them, I think, but I mean, the issue with the child was by the small pond, but the large one is really overgrown as well.
Okay.
Woodlands Park pond or?
Yeah, both Woodlands Park ones.
So when we went, we're going back again to that walk that we had with Claire Pick, her name was Claire Pick. So she was the responsible officer for the play areas, the ponds and the overgrowth in Woodlands Park. So she did say she was going to get that all sorted.
So again, if you pass on the email to her email address to Sue, and Sue can then just jog the memory.
I mean, it may be something they can't do until like the end of the breeding season or something like
It's finished.
hedge trimming, and but it's obviously that time now. Isn't it?
Okay, that's the last. Anything else on outstanding actions?
No.
I think we've done. So that's the last item on the agenda. Last item on the agenda. I'll say thank you for attending this evening, and see you in November.